Well, hello, and thanks for watching another episode of ARFCOM News, your twice-weekly dose of the finest 2A propaganda. Well, it's that time of year again when everybody's ready to really phone it in and do low-effort, year-in-review kind of content. You will not see that sort of thing from me. My low-effort, year-in-review content will not be just phoning it in. I will be following up with the most important stories from this year to tell you what happened with them. How do I determine which stories were most important, you may ask?
Good question.
I performed a detailed statistical analysis of the news stories from previous episodes, which consisted of arbitrarily picking a couple of the top performing videos from the previous year. That is, the ones you collect the most. In all seriousness, a few of these were stories that got a lot of attention, and a few of them were stories that viewers have often asked about. All of them are topics I thought deserved a little bit of follow-up. In no particular order, let's follow up with high ammo, the training ban, private sales, FRTs, braces, and the assassination of Brian Malinowski.
Still mad at me about that?
But it would be impossible for us to produce quality 2A propaganda without sponsors. So before we dive in, let's pay some bills. Today's video is sponsored by Vortex. Their new line of Defender red dots features a constant on emitter with no flicker and shake awake so it is always ready. The Defender CCW is impressively compact for daily carry, the ST is a bit larger, and the XL is an absolute beast with one of the largest windows available on a micro red dot. And by Franklin Armory, those facilitators of freedom who have now made it easier to go binary for fewer Benjamins. Y'all see what I did there? Because Franklin Benjamins? Of course, YouTube will not let us tell you how many Mr. Franklins you can save, so you'll have to find out for yourself, but the discounts are deep for Franklin's end-of-year clearance on legacy binaries. Check it out yourself. As promised, first up is high ammo. This episode got a lot of attention, despite being a relatively minor issue, because it was so chock full of Whiskey Tango Fox. This is right up there with 10 boxes, red hot magazines, and the shoulder thing that goes up.
It is as heavy as 10 boxes that you might be moving.
Grab that red hot magazine and saved a bunch of lives. Just need you guys to melt for that. Now,
I actually don't know what a barrel shot. I think it's a shoulder thing that goes up.
Senator Ben Cardin tweeted he wanted to ban high ammo stocks. Of course, he quickly deleted it, but the internet is forever.
Forever.
Forever, ever.
Forever, ever.
What in the name of Grabthar's hammer is a high ammo stock? Is he talking about a magazine limit, as Stephen Gutowski suggests? Or maybe he thinks ammunition in those scary black military guns feeds in from the stock like in the Nylon 66? I don't know, I figured the most likely explanation is he wanted to somehow attempt to limit the total amount of ammunition a person is allowed to possess in their own home. Setting aside the gross constitutionality of that, it'd also be impossible to enforce. But it turns out Gutowski was right. Cardin's awkwardly worded statement was actually support for a bill which would have banned standard capacity magazines, and he's just a moron who has no clue how guns actually work.
That checks out.
Shocking, I know. So, how did it turn out? Well, Senate Bill 447, the deceptively named Keep Americans Safe Act, never made it out of committee. Boom, 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 boom. Another story that got a lot of attention was the attempt to ban training, because out of one corner of their mouth, control freaks will say that only police and military should be allowed to have guns because only they are trained well enough. And then out of the other corner of their mouth, they're going to try to prevent us from training enough.
Why are they lying?
Wrapped up in the guise of being just a ban on white Supreme Pizza paramilitary groups, the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024, or PPPA, would have created enormous gray areas that would have enabled the ATF to harass people for almost any sort of firearm-related training if they even suggested it might somehow involve defense against other human beings. And like many others, this was just another example of the control freaks whimpering loudly, but ultimately they were unable to move the ball down the field, and this one died in committee too. One of the bigger gut punches this year was when the ATF published their final rule about private transfers, which more or less declared almost any transfer that doesn't go through an FFL is illegal by interpretation of an intentionally broad redefinition of engaged in the business in the Bipartisan Gun Control Act of 2022.
Hey, so, know this. Killing is my business, ladies, and business is good.
Quick reminder, these 7 Republican senators all supported the bill, and according to my very lazy Googling, they're all still senators. So please take a moment to call 202-224-3121 and tell them their bill more or less outlawed private sales of firearms. Tell them bad politicritter, no re-election. And then hang up and call the next one on the list. I don't care what state you live in. They are all United States senators, are they not? Tell them what you think.
You're gonna die for some chickens.
Someone is.
Now, to be fair, I am oversimplifying to say that the ATF's new rule banned all private sales, but the law and the consequent rule are written so broadly as to make any sane person hesitant to do a sale without going through an FFL, pretty much having the effect of banning private sales. Except by now, you're probably picking up on the past tense, and yeah, the rule is under injunction right now in the case of Texas versus ATF. How badass a case name is that?
The stars at night are big and bright.
A preliminary injunction like this is supposed to only be issued if the judge believes the plaintiff will win on the merits, so it looks good for us. The problem here is the underlying law is overly broad, so the ATF will go back to the drawing board and they'll draw up another slightly less ambitious but still overly broad and unconstitutional rule, which stifles most private transfers. So the bottom line is the ATF is enjoined from enforcing the rule for now, but the law is still in place. The feds lost a lot this year, and they are positioned to continue that tradition by losing in the coming year. The ATF attempted to ban forced reset triggers in the same manner that they did ban bump stocks, and it looks like it's going the same way for them.
Yes, sir! Yes, sir! Yes, sir!
Back in July, the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas ruled against the ATF, finding the ATF flagrantly disregarded the Constitution and federal law by attempting to take on the responsibility of lawmaking.
Morals are for men, not gods.
Judge Reed O'Connor stated in his opinion, that responsibility belongs exclusively to Congress. The Constitution assigns such legislative choices to the appropriate elected officials, not life-tenured judges and unelected bureaucrats. Rather than respect this intentional feature of our democratic system, defendants chose to advance a policy agenda wholly divorced from the NFA's statutory text. He ordered the ATF to return items they had seized, send retraction letters to every purchaser of an FRT they warned about FRTs being illegal, and most importantly, he enjoined them from taking any enforcement action. That order is still in effect, but the feds appealed the decision. The decision in that case has not been handed down yet, but I recently reported about how one of the judges on the panel hinted very strongly this is not going to go well for the ATF when he told them, "It seems to me you're trying to get us not to focus on the trigger. Obviously, that's an important part of the statute, single function of the trigger."
Sometimes words mean different things, I gotta know.
So, the bottom line for this one is it is still working its way through the courts, but the ATF is enjoined from enforcing anything, and prospects are not looking good for them. So FRTs should be a go at this station for the foreseeable future. One quick note on binaries though, because this seems to come up a lot. Binary triggers, like the ones made by our sponsor, Franklin Armory, are not forced reset triggers, and the ATF maintains the official position that binary triggers are legal. And to the best of my knowledge, there has never been any question as to their legality either. Likewise, the ATF continued their losing streak with their pistol brace court cases as well. They lost and then lost again on appeal. It's as if it is their favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, their losses are on the grounds that they violated the Administrative Procedures Act by publishing a rule which was arbitrary, capricious, and ridiculously vague.
You know, this is not the conduct of a gentleman. If the conduct of your officers is the measure of a gentleman, I'll take that as a compliment.
The ruling seems to indicate it would be possible for ATF to produce a rule which would be objective enough for the court. So what I'm saying is, the court did not examine the constitutionality of the short barrel portions of the NFA. They only addressed the legality of the rulemaking procedure. So the bottom line for this one is that braces are back on the menu, boys, but it is entirely plausible the ATF could at any moment arrest a person for having a stock on a short barrel rifle if they think they can prove that in court. But more realistically, they're not likely to press this one any further for quite a while after the spanking they just got. And as you gentlefolk know, the ATF's biggest loss of the year was the Supreme Court Bumpy Boy case. This is one of the few times that we don't have to hem and haw. The highest court in the land ruled, and bump stocks are not machine guns, period, rounds complete, end of mission.
That was good for morale.
They remain illegal in Florida and some other authoritarian states, and just like with braces, ATF didn't lose on the constitutionality of the ban. They lost on procedure and interpretation of existing law. Congress could still pass a bill banning them by statute, and we start this whole thing over again, proving such a ban is indeed an infringement on arms. At the same time, this ruling should be treated as precedent for other cases about rules, like the braces and so on. Bottom line, bump stocks are legal again, and the ATF can suck it.
Sucks to be you, nerd.
Of course, I am not a lawyer because I can count past 10 with my boots on, and none of my statements are ever legal advice. Also, if you take legal advice from some rando on the tubes, you're probably the kind of guy who eats gas station sushi. So bottom line, the ATF got smacked hard repeatedly on private sales, FRTs, braces, and bump stocks, all just this year. And if you have any of those devices, you're probably good to go, if you believe this rando not lawyer guy. But we also had some losses this year, some really profound losses. The ATF assassinated Brian Malinowski and completely got away with it. They intentionally chose the most aggressive approach possible, tampered with evidence, provoked a response from a sleeping homeowner, and executed him. I won't belabor you with the details because you know. But the follow-up is, unfortunately, no one faced any consequences whatsoever. Instead, they were congratulated and moved on to enjoying life with their families after executing an American to make a political point.
Yes, crime does pay.
And I need to remind you that political prisoners Dexter Taylor, Chris Irvin, and Matt Hoover remain imprisoned. Taylor is in Rikers Island for exercising his right to make a gun at home, and Irvin and Hoover are locked up in federal prison for a picture of a machine gun part that wasn't even drawn to scale. Each of them is imprisoned unjustly, and donating to their legal funds will not only help to right the wrong that was done individually to them, it could help set legal precedent to protect all of us from government infringements. As always, we'll include links down there in the doobly-doo, so please give generously. And hey, lots of other stuff happened this year, and most of it was good news for gun rights.
Stuff's getting better. Stuff's getting better every day.
The Second Amendment was treated like a second-class right for a very long time, but we have been making steady, accelerating progress, with the Heller, McDonald, and now Bruen rulings as precedent, buttressed by the Supreme Court's rejection of Chevron deference for criminal issues. The control freaks have found it nearly impossible to defend their terrible policies in court. Of course, it's a long fight to drag them there in the first place, so it's also great news that Trump and the Republicans generally cleaned house in the election. No, I am not about to start simping for party politics, but let us be real. The red team is less likely to pass infringements. All of that put together is really good news for gun rights, and maybe not great news for the gun industry. The Trump slump is real, and all your favorite brands are staring down the barrel of 4 years of sales that are not stoked by panic buying anymore. So give them some love when you can. Remember, without the industry folks, we wouldn't have the arms to exercise our rights, and honestly, they're the source of a lot of the legal funding. I hope you and your family had a great Christmas, and I wish you a Happy New Year. I normally end every episode by saying I love you. Partly to be cheeky, but partly because I really believe it's important for all of us to spread love in this world, and I don't mean some hippie romantic crap either.
This is for all you new people. I only have one rule. Everyone fights. No one quits.
Love is an action where you put another person's needs before your own, and the world needs a lot more of that. You don't have to kiss a stranger, but it wouldn't hurt to smile and maybe let them go in front of you in line. I know you don't owe me nothing, but it would really make my day if you could try to give one person some love today. What do you think? I love you. To their legal one. Does your mother sew? Boom! Get her to sew that.